This is a video about the hostels I stayed at on the Appalachian Trail. So the first one was at mile 69 and it was called Hostel Around the Bend, and that was because it was kind of like around a bend and the trail kind of bended at that point. It was funny because they put on mile 69. Super hilarious. It was also at Georgia, and it had been 8 days of hiking at that point, so I had done 69 miles in 8 days. And yeah, it was nice. They had coffee. There was a couple other hikers I knew at that point on that. So, and then the next one wasn't until my next day, which was the Grove Hostel. So the Grove Hostel was run by two previous hikers, and it was like kind of a cozy home atmosphere. I think they only had like 7 or 8 bunks, and sometimes they needed reservations. We actually even met a couple section hikers there. So it was kind of like a smaller, low key hostel. And I just remember that my biggest memory from that hostel was how big the hiker box was. Like that, it was just so packed, the hiker box. And I resupplied just using their hiker box because there's just a ton of stuff left over by the bubble. I was a little behind the bubble. So yeah, that was number two. That was the Grove. So number three, trying to find number three. Okay, number three was actually Laughing Heart Hostel at Hot Springs. So Laughing Heart Hostel. Number three place was Hot Springs, and that was the Laughing Hearts Hostel. But I actually did not stay there. But I stayed in Hot Springs. But I stopped by the Laughing Hearts Hostel and did laundry at the Laughing Hearts Hostel, and there was actually another hiker's birthday that day, so we celebrated with some donuts. And then there was actually a lady we met, uh, me and a couple people I was hiking with, and there was this lady we met who said she had an Airbnb we could stay in for free. So that was really nice trail magic at Hot Springs. So I stayed at a free Airbnb in Hot Springs. And then my next hostel was after the Smokies. So Smokies, there was no actually, I stayed in a hotel in Gatlinburg when going through the Smokies, because the Smokies, the only stop is Gatlinburg. In there's like I think like 70 miles of Smokies or something, or 80, and the only stop is Gatlinburg. So I did stop at Gatlinburg because I had to resupply more than I thought, and I stayed at a hotel there, and that's where actually I met my boyfriend in the laundry room at one of the hotels. And then later, we also hiked together till Standing Bear. And yeah, Standing Bear was cool. It was at the end of the Smokies. It was like the expired food rumors were true. So the third hostel I stayed at was at Standing Bear, but it was actually the fourth place I was, staying at in terms of indoors. Because I stayed at a hotel in Gatlinburg. There wasn't a laundry machine. You used like the scrub to wash, but it was a nice community. There was like a fire running all night, and it was just nice people, and there was frozen pizza. It was cool. I thought it was pretty all right. And then the next one was the Uncle Johnny's. So I stayed at Uncle Johnny's right after a few more days from Standing Bear, and yeah, I thought Uncle Johnny's was really nice. They were really affected by the Hurricane Helene, so I think they got better though. They got a lot of people who were working on that. Lots of hiker crews were came by and helped out. And Uncle Johnny's hostel was actually a very nice place. I think it was one of my favorite hostels. I tented there, and just the coffee was hitting. The shower rooms were awesome. I thought Uncle Johnny's was great. I think that might be my favorite memory at the hostel. Plus, like, hung out around the fireplace, and I also got talking to my boyfriend, my now boyfriend, more there, so I got to know him more there. And then after that, there was Mountain Harbor. That was the Mountain Harbor BNB. So I think wait, I think I'm on number five. I'm gonna say number five. But Mountain Harbor BNB was actually really good. Yeah, their breakfast was really good. They had like tons of like coffee options. They're known for their awesome breakfast. They had tons of coffee options and so many plates. I'm like, how do they make that every day? They make like tons of plates of food every single day. And yeah, Mountain Harbor BNB. So I'm still in the North Carolina, Tennessee area at this point, which is where most of my hostel stays are. And then eventually I came to Virginia, and what are some hostels I stayed at in Virginia? So there was some time I did not stay. I did stay overnight in Damascus. Can't remember what the. I think it was the Broken Fiddle. Yep, I stayed at the Broken Fiddle hostel in Damascus. Pretty nice. Oh wait, I didn't stay there, but I showed up very early morning and hung out and had some coffee and did the shower there. But yeah, Broken Fiddle was really nice, run by previous hiker. A lot of these hostels were run by previous hikers. Yeah, nice outdoor shower. I like that, you know. And then after that, I the next one I stayed at. So there was a famous hostel, two big hostels to choose between. There was Woods Hole Hostel, which was like known as like the more fancy but more expensive one, even though like fancy it's not like super fancy or anything, but you know it's nice. It was known as being really nice and more expensive. So there was Woods Hole and there was Four Pines to choose from, and this was right around the Triple Crown area, and I stayed at the Four Pines hostel, and it was just like this big garage room full of bunks, and I thought the lady who was running it was just awesome. Like there was 20, 30 of us hikers staying there, donation based, and they had like shuttles going, and the lady was running it just out of like the goodness of her heart. There's tons of food in the fridge. I thought the whole garage theme was really nice, and she even got me a private room, so that was kind of her. So yeah, I thought Four Pines was a good memory. That's probably my second favorite hostel. I'd say Uncle Chani's was probably my first, and Four Pines was my second. Actually, as I go through these hostels in my mind, I'm gonna change my mind because a lot of my those hostels are really good. Yeah, so and then the next hostel I stayed with was with the famous 12 Tribes. I did stop by a couple other hostels on the way, like the Bears Den Hostel and the Blackburn AT Center, to grab some food and soda. But I didn't stay at another hostel until West Virginia, right around West Virginia, Stony Brook Organic Farm and Hostel. So I stayed with the 12 Tribes. So they're known for being a cult, which they're kind of culty in the sense that, you know, they're like, if you have friends or family that doesn't support us or support you joining us, you should cut them off. And I think that's something, if you hear like other people being like, if they don't support you joining us, cut them off. That's like a, I think, language that cults use. So yeah, they are culty in that way that they encouraged members to not contact their families or friends that didn't support them in joining them, in joining the 12 tribes. And they do like let go of all their belongings, and so to join the 12 tribes you have to be really dedicated. You let go of all your belongings and then you join their farm and you just don't own anything, and you live off the farm in the home with all those people, and you're supposed to be staying for life but you don't have to. You know, I met people who had left and came back, so they're not like pressure or scary in a way that they're going to force you to join them or force you to stay there. They were actually very nice and friendly to me and really accommodating. But they're also, there's, it's like, yeah, they might technically be a cult, but the people who are in them, the people who are like in the 12 tribes chose that. So that's their choice. If they want to let go of all their belongings and farm for the rest of their life with that community that wants to do the same and just dedicate the rest of their life to that, then they're welcome to. That's their choice. No one's being forced there. So yeah, it might be a cult, but it's a nice cult, in my opinion. And then after Virginia, there's a couple hostels I stayed in Pennsylvania. There was like the big mansion, Iron Master's Mansion Hostel, which was like a donation 20, I think it was like 25 bunks, 25 per bunk. Pretty nice. The lady who was running it was so kind. She was just like a caretaker there and she was awesome. And it was just like a mansion with, and then you go inside and it's like a laid back hostel vibe. I really like that. And then there was this church hostel at Delaware Water Gap, the Presbyterian Church of the Mountain. So that hostel was so like so hot. Oh my god, it was so hot. Like it was, I think, July or something at that point, and it was just so hot to be inside. Oh my, what happened there for me was, I there was like bunks without like mattresses or anything, but there was like these bunks you could stay in, and I stayed at the top bunk. At first I laid on the top bunk, but it was just way too hot to fall asleep And I was like, how can I get colder? How can I get cooler? And I know heat rises. So I was like, I don't know if I'm able to fall asleep unless I go sleep on the floor. Like that felt like the coolest place. I was like sweating and stuff. So I went and started sleeping on the floor, and then someone stepped on my face. But that was totally not their fault because they couldn't see me. And I was in a bad spot probably. I was just not thinking straight. I was like, damn, like so what I ended up doing was just sleeping on the floor behind a couch. Yeah, that was my experience in that hostel. It's just extremely hot hostel. And then okay, this is Pennsylvania, so at this point I'm out of the South and I'm in the North pretty much. So after Pennsylvania, I didn't stay at any hostels through New York, New Jersey. I think there was this one hotel I stayed at. I tented out. It was run by this really peaceful guy in Lehigh. I think it was Lehigh town or but yeah, the hotel I tented at run by a very peaceful man and nice man. Um, but yeah, I didn't say any other hostel. New York, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, no hostels. Not until Vermont, and I stayed at the Yellow Deli again. This time, when I stayed in the Yellow Deli in West, I helped out with their, oops, that was like an ad that went off on my computer. But I helped out with their farm when I stayed in West Virginia for like a day as like my 0 day. And then on Yellow Deli, when I stayed there, I in Vermont, I just, barely even saw the 12 tribes. I just had breakfast with them, and that breakfast was really good. But yeah, actually, when I stayed in West Virginia, I was the only hiker that was staying with them in West Virginia versus in the Vermont Yellow Deli hostel. There was a lot of other hikers staying with them. But yeah, that's why in West Virginia, I actually got to know the community a lot more than I did in the Vermont one because I was the only hiker in West Virginia and really like interacted with them when I was helping with the farm. And then yeah, I think I might have stayed in one more hostel in Vermont. I can't remember though. Might have been. I can't remember. There was just so many hostels. It might have been the Notch or something. Okay. And then I stayed at a bunch of huts through the Whites. That's like when you help them cook or clean, and then you get free access to the dining room floor to sleep that night. So you help the huts clean and stuff, and you get the best part is you get free leftovers, which was a lot of leftover food. And then once all the hut guests went to their bunk rooms, you could sleep on the dining room floor, which was nice. I don't like setting up my tent, so. And then in Maine, I had a few good hostels, a couple good hostels. The one I'm remembering right now is the Roadhouse, the Maine Roadhouse. I also stayed at the Notch, I think. I'm not good with names, but the Maine Roadhouse, 100% would recommend. Uh, they have photos of all the thru hikers that came by on their walls, and they also, yeah, it was very cozy. They set up a very cozy atmosphere with very big couches. And then Shaw's, I stayed at Shaw's. It's the final hostel before the 100 Mile Wilderness, run by two hikers who have been doing it for a while, running the hostel for a while. There's bad internet there, but they have a lot of hostel amenities. It's fun. They have like a big yard, and it's kind of like Uncle Johnny's, honestly, but all the way up north in Maine. So that was my experience with hostels.